The air inside the lambed-in tower was thick, weighty, as if the very space was being compressed by an invisible mental pressure. Elias Thorne, the man said to be the tower's sentinel, sat opposite Kael at a dark wooden table, lit dimly by an oil lamp suspended on iron chains. Elias wore no uniform. He was clad in a heavy, worn leather coat, his face hard and wrinkled, not from age, but from material. His skin seemed to have transformed into a sturdy, coarse substance, like cooled volcanic rock, with faint, greenish crystal scars glinting beneath his temples. Elias had not spoken a word since Kael stepped over the threshold after a 4-day trek. Now, he began his monologue without any greeting or introduction. His voice was a low rasp, echoing like grinding stone. "You, recruit, look here," Elias said, placing his two large, calloused hands flat on the table. His fingers were thick and rigid, the knuckles abnormally swollen. "You filled out the paperwork. You signed the deployment contract. You believe you are a forestry surveyor assigned to a wildfire observation post at Lambden." Elias leaned forward, his icy gaze piercing Kael. "Shed that notion immediately. Right now? Because if you retain even one shred of illusion about normal work, you will die within a week. And worse, you will not die alone." Kael stiffened. He had prepared for solitude, for boredom, but not for this gratuitous hostility. "This is not a wildfire observation post, recruit," Elias stressed, pushing a worn map toward Kael. It was not topographical. It was an astronomical sketch featuring magical rings and symbols surrounding a central point. The Lambden Tower is an anchor point. Do you know what an anchor is? It is the final spike driven into a world being torn apart. It is the sole point, the only point, where the astral and physical equilibrium is forcibly maintained. We do not observe flames. We prevent this world from igniting from its foundational layer. Elias used a rough finger to trace the area around the mountain, where the physical map ended and the chaotic symbols began. Outside the vision of scientists, located just past the boundaries of human perception, is the Black Wilds. You walked through it to get here, but you only saw trees and mist. That is only because Lambden is doing its job correctly. He reiterated their role. "We are not sentries. We are gatekeepers. We do not alert any authorities, because no authority is capable of understanding or fighting our threat. Our sole duty is to maintain the magical structure of this anchor point and prevent the invasion of the void entities." Elias sighed, a sound like wind leaking through rock fissures. "They do not use guns or bombs. They use corruption. They use attraction. They use replacement." He paused, waiting for the truth to sink in. Violating the rules at Lambden is not an administrative mistake, recruit. It is an act of magical sabotage and an invitation to invasion. Lambden has no forgiveness for carelessness. If you make a mistake, you will not only die, but will become the very doorway they need. Elias Thorne leaned back in his chair, revealing a deep weariness hidden beneath his rigid exterior. "You think you are new personnel deployed to replace the previous guard? Wrong. You are the new person placed in the next sacrificial position. I have not left this Lambden in 30 years. Look at me, recruit. I am living proof of the cost of compliance. 30 years. Longer than anyone alive in the old system. They don't send me aid. They don't send me literal paychecks. They send me replacements, people I must train so they can resist temptation, so they don't open the gate for the Black Wilds before their time is up. I hold this gate while others succumb, are corrupted, or are absorbed into this very stone wall. And I will hold it until my soul dissolves or my body completely turns to stone." Elias continued coldly. "You saw how beautiful the Lambden forest is out there, didn't you? The strange lights, the faint golden fog, the flora that shouldn't exist by natural law. Those are the first whispers of the Black Wilds, the sweet invitations promising truth, power, or, worst of all, the way back home." He closed his eyes, the fatigue deepening. "Now be silent and listen. These are the 4 vital rituals of Lambden. These are the magical walls you are forbidden to touch. As I said, they do not use physical force." Elias opened his eyes. The void entities have no bodies in this space unless they borrow or create one. They fight by erosion, by false attraction. If you try to fight them with a gun, you are merely shooting at your own soul. Ritual 1. The Illuminated Fruit, the Lamp of Deception. When patrolling, especially after midnight, you will see them. Succulent bushes, or mushrooms that emit a gentle yellow or green light. They look delicious, glittering like jewels. They emit a sweet fragrance, promising rest and exquisite clarity. Elias leaned in, his voice dropping to a dangerous pitch. This is the simplest rule, yet the most often violated. It is absolutely forbidden to consume any light-emitting flora found in the Lambden forest. Kael started to speak. Why? Silence. Elias cut him off. You do not ask why. You listen and obey. Your reason is the survival of this world. That fruit is an invitation from the Black Wilds. It is not a physical poison. It is a promise of false enlightenment. When a person eats it, their soul is immediately bound to the soil of the forest. You can still walk, still talk for the first few days, but your soul is no longer yours. That person will become a silent collaborator, Elias continued, staring at Kael's hands. They are living, speechless statues. They do not need to preach the void. Their existence itself is a nexus point. They will stand there, unmoving, unblinking, guarding the invasion from within. I have had to eliminate 2 of them in the last decade. They look like humans, but inside they are only an empty echo of the Black Wilds. Ritual 2. The Personal Trace, the Psychic Beacon. The Lambden Tower provides enough basic materials: dried food, anonymous personal items, unbranded clothing. You are not permitted to bring anything of emotional value inside the tower. It is forbidden to bring any personal items, keepsakes, photographs, or letters carrying emotional significance into the tower. Phones, personal computers, or any item capable of storing personal memories or connecting to the outside world must be burned or buried outside the magical suppression perimeter. Kael felt his pocket, his worn wallet, and a small family photo. He had discarded them before climbing the tower, but the guilt and doubt remained. What are these things? They are psychic beacons that guide them. The void may not know your name, but it knows the absence you leave behind in others. Those keepsakes are the thinnest spiritual threads they can latch onto. Elias hissed. They will create perfect duplicates or terrifying illusions. You will see your parents, your lover, your friends, standing just outside the fog, calling your name in their real voices. They will cry. They will beg you to open the gate. They will tell you details only your family could know. If you keep a keepsake, you are giving them the exact blueprint to attack your sanity. This violation leads to 2 outcomes. Loss of self. You become so absorbed in the illusion you cannot distinguish reality from the void. Or, worse, you are completely replaced by a perfect imposter. That imposter will talk to me, do the tasks, but inside is an entirely new entity, waiting for the right moment to neutralize the anchor point. Elias tapped the stone wall. Everything here must be neutral. You must become neutral. Your former identity no longer matters. You are not a son, not a lover, not a colleague. You are an empty vessel assigned to guard. We delve deeper into direct interactions, those that occur less frequently but are far more catastrophic. Ritual 3. The Shadow Stags, the Grim Exchange. In the low fog, especially on moonless nights, you will see large animals moving. They are deer-like creatures, tall, gaunt, their antlers twisted and glittering like frosted glass. They are called the Shadow Stags. Their nature is incorporeal. They are entities moving in borrowed skin. They might look like anything: deer, elk, even a fleeting glimpse of a human. But they always carry that warped shadow and terrifying silence. The rule: it is forbidden to record images, take photographs, make detailed sketches, record video of the shadow stags moving in the low fog. Elias explained that recording them is more than curiosity. It is an act of stealing their light. By attempting to fix them into a physical moment, you are giving them a permanent form in our world. They do not accept that gift freely. The retaliation will be immediate and magically substitutionary. It is called the Grim Exchange. The physical body of the gatekeeper, your body, is traded for an imposter entity. That entity will step out of that photo or sketch, perfect in every gesture. Meanwhile, your actual soul will be eternally imprisoned within that image as a curse, trapped in the very moment you tried to capture. Look at them, remember them, but never, absolutely never, create a copy of them. Ritual 4. The Echo Threshold, the Psychic Contagion. To the northwest of Lamdin is the third ridge. You are forbidden to pass beyond it. We maintain a safe distance. This ridge is not just a geographical boundary, it is the Echo Threshold. Sometimes, you will see a wounded entity, something the tower or Lamdin itself has harmed, attempting to crawl or flee toward the third ridge. You might see it in pain, or it might appear to be carrying something valuable. It might even look like a person needing help. This is the ultimate decree. Never cross the third ridge to pursue or observe the wounded creatures. Elias pointed to the astronomical map. The Echo Threshold is where entities shatter, dissolve, and return to the void, where they can reconstitute their essence. Our interference in this process is unacceptable. Chasing them serves only one purpose: to allow them to bring something back here. If you intervene, if you cross the threshold, you will return carrying an invisible psychic contagion. This contagion does not kill by cough or fever. It is the spread of chaos, hallucination, and madness. It latches onto your soul. You will see everything distorted, you will hear voices in the walls, and most importantly, anyone you contact afterward, be it me, the resupply crew, or anyone, will be quickly infected. That is the quickest way Lamdin falls, from the inside, when the gatekeepers no longer trust what they see. This is not a place for compassion, recruit. You are not a rescue worker. Elias stood up, and Kael first noticed the man's terrifying height and the stiffness in his movements. The oil lamp highlighted Elias's transformed physical features. The skin on his neck and wrists was no longer supple. It had hardened into a crust like volcanic rock, interspersed with the faint lines of crystal scars, as if a layer of mineral was slowly growing from beneath. Elias Thorne was no longer entirely a man of flesh and blood. "What do you see?" Elias asked, his voice challenging. Kael swallowed. "You are injured." "No. I am adapting," Elias replied with frightening coldness. "Prolonged exposure to the void will transform you. If you resist, you shatter. If you accept, you become this." He lightly tapped his own cheekbone, emitting a dry, clicking sound. "I have stripped away everything personal. I have eliminated the identity of Elias Thorne. I have turned myself into the watchtower, a necessary tool, without emotion, without ambition. The philosophy here is not to fight to win," Elias concluded, looking out the window, where the fog was rolling in thicker. "Victory is impossible. Lamdin's job is merely delay. Your only goal is to avoid corruption and maintain spiritual integrity until you are replaced or destroyed. Your predecessors failed. They violated the rituals, not because they were stupid or weak, but because they tried to retain their humanity. They kept photos of their lovers, Ritual 2. They experimented with strange fungi out of curiosity for enlightenment, Ritual 1. Elias described the last corruption with chilling detachment. The last one, a young man named Devon, tried to carry a wounded animal back from the Echo Threshold, Ritual 4. He returned, seeming normal, but within 3 days, his voice became grotesque, repeating non-human hisses. He infected everyone in the resupply crew who came near. We had to eliminate the entire resupply area and burn him in place. He was absorbed completely into the stone shell of the mountain, leaving only crystal scars like mine, but darker and more rotten. Lamdin requires perfect emptiness, Kael. Let solitude be your objective. If you feel longing or a desire to return, consider it an attack by the Black Wilds. Elias turned back to the table, looking at Kael one last time. You will die. You must accept that now. Everyone who comes here dies, or becomes something worse than death. But your goal is to keep yourself whole until then, so you do not drag others down or open the gate. Suddenly, Elias froze. His stone-hard face shifted, as if listening to an invisible frequency. His eyes went blank, focused on the space to the northwest. The air in the tower grew noticeably colder, the oil lamp flickering violently. "Time is up for you to absorb the rules," Elias hissed, his tone shifting from weary instruction to mortal urgency. Something just stirred near the third ridge, echo threshold. It was repelled by Lammed in, but it is crawling back to the void. It is wounded. Elias retrieved a heavy coat and an old flashlight, throwing them toward Kael. There is no rest, no preparation. On your first night, you join the patrol. Immediately. That is the only way you will learn the true horror of Lammed in. He pushed Kael toward the door. Your mission is extremely simple and extremely deadly, recruit. Elias placed a hand on Kael's shoulder, its weight like a crushing stone block. Do not follow it. Ensure it does not return. And absolutely, do not cross the threshold. If it vanishes from your sight, come back here. Even if you hear pleas in the voice of your dearest loved one. Because if you violate Ritual 4 on your first night, I will not save you. I will burn Lammed in down before I allow you to bring that contagion into the tower. Go. The test begins now. Elias Thorne did not sit. He stood in the dead center of the frigid control room, a head taller than Kael, his heavy silhouette cast long beneath the flickering light of the astrometry monitors. Take that off, Elias said, his voice thick and dry, like crumbling bark. He pointed at the Azure Peak surveyor patch on Kael's sleeve pocket. That nonsense is only to soothe the paper pushers below. You are no surveyor. And this is not a routine post. Kael felt the chill emanate not just from the mountain altitude, but from the void in Elias's tone. All expectations of a simple firewatch station, of mundane patrols, were instantly shattered by a brutal dismissal. You see the Azure Peak Tower, Elias continued, gesturing toward the misted glass window, where the night swallowed the forest whole. They call it an observation post, but the truth is, it is an anchor point. This is the only barrier between the world you know and the Black Wilds. It connects and simultaneously separates. If this anchor point fails, everything below crumbles. He turned, locking eyes with Kael. His eyes were not brown or blue, but the ash gray of something burned and turned to stone. We are not sentries. We are gatekeepers. Our sole function is to maintain astrometric balance, keeping this magical gate shut. We prevent the encroachment of void entities. Do you understand? Elias stepped closer. His face, weathered and etched with faint, mysterious scars that looked like crystalline veins running beneath his skin, was now suffused with profound weariness. Violating rules up here is not an administrative error. It is an act of magical sabotage. It is an invitation to the void. You are not a fresh deployment, soldier. You are a fresh placement for sacrifice. You hold this position until you cannot, or until they find your replacement, who will likely be another fool who thinks this is an extended camping trip. Elias paused. He drew a deep breath that sounded like scraping sand. I have been here for 30 years. Longer than anyone alive below can remember. My existence is proof of the cost of adherence. Now, listen closely. Every rule is a wall meant to protect your soul from corruption. The threat is not physical monsters. They do not use claw or fist, Elias explained, looking at Kael as if he were a child needing instruction on fire. The void entities fight with corruption, false allure, and identity substitution. They seek to strip your will and memory, turning you into an empty instrument. Elias began to enumerate, counting on his rough fingers. Hashtag Ritual 1. The Luminous Fruit, the Lamp of Deceit. Absolutely forbidden, consuming any species of bioluminescent flora found in the Azure Peak forests. Kael started to ask why, but Elias cut him off with a chilling glare. The plant life here is nourished by astrometric energy. The pulsing, blue, glowing fruit is the invitation of the wilds. They are not poisonous in the conventional sense. They grant a false enlightenment. They show you a fleeting beauty of the void. They make you feel connected. Elias emphasized the word, his disgust palpable. Once you eat it, Your soul is tethered to the forest. You will not die. You will become a silent collaborator, a living, voiceless statue, eyes wide open. You will stand guard for the invasion from within, waiting silently for the anchor point to collapse. Do not taste it, do not touch it. Treat it as the devil's sap. ############################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################### bringing any personal item, keepsake, photograph, or correspondence with sentimental meaning inside this tower. See that backpack? Elias pointed at Kael's military rucksack at his feet. Burn it. Now, keep only inspected uniforms, equipment, and dry rations. If you bring anything of emotional value up here, it becomes a psychic beacon to guide them. It is like lighting a lighthouse in the deepest night. The void, Elias elaborated, cannot understand emotion, but it can replicate it perfectly. They will create perfect copies or horrifying illusions of your loved ones. Wives, children, parents. They will use them to dismantle your sanity. The violation leads to self-erasure. Or worse, you are completely replaced by a perfect mimic who will continue your work until the anchor point is fully compromised. Empty yourself. That is your only defense. The next two rituals require self-mastery. They are easy to violate because they strike at your instincts, curiosity, and compassion. Ritual 3. Shadow Stags, the Grim Exchange. Forbidden, recording imagery in any form, photographing, detailed sketching, of the shadow stags moving through the low mist. Kael frowned. Shadow stags? They are not wildlife. They are entities moving in borrowed skin. They are errors, cracks in the fabric. They deliberately wander into your view, especially when the fog is thick and they look like an ethereal spectacle, Elias stated. Your act of recording them is deemed stealing the light from them. They believe you are attempting to cage their existence in a static frame. Their reaction is an act of retaliatory magic substitution. The consequence is the Grim Exchange. Your physical body will be swapped with a mimicking entity, perhaps a stag or something worse. Meanwhile, your soul is eternally imprisoned within that image, turning it into a curse, a horrific portrait of agony. Ritual 4. The Echo Threshold, Psychic Contagion. This is the most critical. Absolutely forbidden. Crossing the third ridge line to pursue or observe wounded creatures. Elias pointed to a faded trail on an old topographical map, marked with faded red ink. That is the Echo Threshold. It is not merely a ridge. It is the edge of the wilds, where fractured entities retreat into the void. They are often damaged or warped when they attempt to breach this anchor point and fail. They flee there to dissolve. Compassion will tell you to follow and finish them. Do not. It is a trap. Your interference with the dissolving process is unacceptable. When you cross the threshold, even a single step, you are marked. A gatekeeper returning from the Echo Threshold will carry an invisible psychic contagion. It does not kill you immediately. Instead, it is a waiting source of chaos. It rapidly spreads hallucination and madness to anyone that person contacts. If you return here after crossing the threshold, you will not just kill yourself. You will turn me, and anyone sent up here with supplies, into raving lunatics. I will not be merciful. If you cross it, you stay there. Elias had lived by these rules so long they were etched into his physical being. His skin was no longer soft. It was thick, textured like cooled volcanic rock, and the faint crystalline scars on his hands shimmered faintly under the tower lights. He was living evidence of prolonged exposure to what he was trying to hold back. I retain nothing personal. Do you see me? Elias asked, almost a challenge. I have no photographs. I cannot recall my mother's name. I stripped my former identity to make myself the necessary tool, a watchtower and obstruction. You must do the same. He turned to Kael with cold intensity. The core philosophy is this: we do not fight to win. Victory is impossible. We fight not to be corrupted, to maintain the integrity of our souls, if only for one more day. The more humanity you hold on to, the easier you are to exploit. Elias recounted his predecessors. The man before you, Thomas, violated Ritual 2. He kept a photograph of his daughter. He wasn't weak. He was just a loving father. Now, the thing that stands in the dark corners of the watch, occasionally speaking in Thomas's distorted voice, is not Thomas, or those who try to photograph the stags out of scientific curiosity. They are now imprisoned on old film stock, their bodies completely absorbed into the stone casing of the mountain, used only as hollow pillars. Do not try to be a hero. Try to be a tool. That is the only way you survive as long as I have. Elias stared at the astrometry monitors. His face was unchanged, yet an invisible tension thickened the air in the room. You will die, Elias stated flatly, without emotion. We all die? The goal is not endurance, but maintaining spiritual integrity until that moment. Abruptly, a measurement curve on the central screen flashed stark red. A soft, menacing beeping cut through the deadly silence of the tower. Elias shed his fatigue, shifting into maximum alert. The sudden change in tone startled Kael. No more time for rules absorption. The threat is here. He pointed to the magical radar display, where a strange, distinct luminous, neither green nor yellow, but milky white, was throbbing near the western boundary line. An entity has begun to fragment in the area of the third ridge, the echo threshold. It is failing to retreat. It is dissolving. Elias turned back, thrusting a high-powered flashlight and an approved patrol kit into Kael's hands. You should have had your first night to rest. No. Immediate deployment. The new man is on patrol immediately. This is your test. Kael stiffened. But I am unprepared. You have been trained enough, Elias growled. Everything you need to know has been stated. This is the implementation. You need to directly confront the threat you were warned about in Ritual 4. Elias shoved Kael toward the heavy iron door leading outside. Wind howled through the gap. The mission is simple but deadly, Elias concluded, his gaze conveying absolute coldness. Do not track it. Ensure it does not return. And absolutely, do not cross the threshold. Kael stood motionless in the dim, antiquated light of the command center, the smell of damp mold and old dust clinging to the air. Facing him, Elias Thorne did not resemble a normal supervisor. He looked like a statue carved from the cold basalt layers of the mountain. Elias extinguished his cigarette with a dry tack, the sound echoing sharply in the room designed for silence. His gaze upon Kael was not one of assessment, but a visceral confirmation of a new utility. I know what they told you, Elias began, his voice raspy and heavy like morning fog. They said you are the new surveyor. They said this is wildfire maintenance. You look intelligent, Kael, so I won't insult you by letting you believe that garbage. Elias gestured toward the thick storm-proof window, which revealed only endless night and the vague silhouettes of steep peaks. This is not a fire watch station. Blue Peak Tower is an anchor point. It is the single staple, the only nail, holding the veil of reality from being torn apart, he stressed. On the other side of that veil is the Black Wilds. You are not a watchman. You are the gatekeeper. Their objective was not to track smoke, but to maintain the stellar balance, a delicate energy matrix that, if disturbed, would invite things incomprehensible. The void entities don't need grand doorways. They need carelessness, Elias said, stepping closer. Violating the rules here isn't an administrative error. It's an act of magical sabotage. It's personally dragging an entity into this world, into your mind, into your flesh. You aren't a new assignment, Kael. You are the new sacrifice placed in position. Elias stepped back, his eyes flashing with deep, malicious weariness. I've been here 30 years. I've seen 6 Kaels arrive and depart in various horrific ways. My existence, this look, this voice, is proof of the cost of compliance. Now be silent and listen. The threat isn't roaring monsters, Kael. Those creatures are the consequence. The threat is corruption. They fight through false allure, through identity substitution, by making you desire what you should not possess. The void doesn't need to kill you to win. It only needs to turn you into a collaborator, Elias explained, delving into the rules. Ritual 1. The Luminous Fruit, the Deception Lamp. Around Blue Peak, You will find several species of glowing flora. They are neither magical nor beautiful. They are an invitation. You are absolutely forbidden to consume any luminous plant, fungus, or fruit in the forest. Elias pointed to a glistening, spiderweb-like scar on his wrist. That fruit grants what they call false enlightenment. It is a resin that glues your soul to the forest, forcing you to witness the coming invasion, yet unable to speak of it. The consumer doesn't die immediately. They become a silent collaborator. They are living, wordless statues, standing guard for the invasion from within. You may encounter one or two of them around the ridge perimeter. Do not look into their eyes too long, and do not attempt to help them. They are already the gate. Ritual 2. Personal traces, the spiritual beacon. Elias walked toward Kael's backpack, where he had carefully hidden a worn photo of his family. This is where the others failed, Kael. They tried to hold on to themselves. You are forbidden to bring any personal items, keepsakes, photographs, or letters with emotional significance inside the tower. Elias laid his hand upon the photograph. To the void, these are not memories. They are spiritual beacons. They emit your emotional frequency, and that attracts identity hunters. The void will not attempt to fool you with vague ghosts. It will create perfect, brilliant, terrifyingly detailed replicas of your loved ones. They will appear outside the tower, calling your name, begging you to open the door. If you violate this ritual, Elias coldly concluded, the result is self-loss. You will commit suicide by opening the door to the perfect imposter. Or worse, you are replaced. One day, you will wake up and find a facsimile of yourself standing in the tower, speaking with your voice, but utterly empty. The next two rituals demand a deeper abandonment. They require the abandonment of curiosity and compassion, Elias said, his voice shifting to a more urgent tone of warning. Ritual 3. The Shadow Stags, the Grim Exchange. In the low morning fog, especially around the rock valleys, you will see them, gaunt, tall creatures with dense racks of horns. They are called the Shadow Stags. You are forbidden from recording their image in any form, photography, detailed sketches, or any storage medium of these stags. Elias explained that these creatures are not entirely physical. They are entities moving in borrowed skin, existing only through reflection and distorted light. Recording their image is considered theft of light from them. They cannot manifest without that reflection, and they will demand it back, Elias hissed. The consequence is the Grim Exchange. They will switch positions. Your physical body will be occupied by a doppelganger, perhaps a soulless corpse continuing the patrol duties. Meanwhile, your soul will be eternally imprisoned within that photograph or sketch, a curse bound to the paper. Ritual 4. The Echoing Threshold, Psychic Contagion. This is the most difficult rule to uphold, for it demands absolute indifference to suffering. The third ridge, you can see it from this window during the day. It's not a normal geographical boundary. It is the echoing threshold. That is where the entities shatter, where invaders who have been critically damaged finally return to the void. You might see a stag with a broken leg, a human-like creature crawling, or even a wounded dog whimpering. You must never cross the third ridge to pursue or track those injured creatures. Do not intervene. Saving those creatures is pointless, as they are merely disintegrating shells. Interfering with their process of dissolution is unacceptable. A gatekeeper who returns from the threshold carries something terrible, the invisible psychic contagion, Elias said, his voice laced with warning. This ailment doesn't kill with fever or cough. It transmits chaos, hallucination, and madness. It spreads rapidly through mere ordinary contact. If you return from the threshold, not only have you failed, but you become the greatest threat to the tower's integrity. I will not hesitate to put you down. Kael tried to swallow, but his throat was bone dry. He looked at Elias again, now understanding more about the markings on the man's body. Elias's skin wasn't just wrinkled. In places, it was hard and gray like volcanic rock, the veins harboring vague crystalline scars, proof of prolonged exposure to the shattered energy of the void. This is where everyone fails, Elias whispered, touching a large scar on his temple. They try to keep their old identity. They try to maintain attachment to the outside world, a world that is not real to us. To survive here, you must become a tool. I erased Elias Thorne. I no longer remember my wife's name or the smell of my hometown. I transformed myself into the Watchtower, a function, not a man. You must do the same. Elias stressed their bitter, cruel philosophy. We fight not to win. Victory is impossible. We fight not to be corrupted. We maintain the integrity of our souls. We keep the gate closed until they send up a new fool to replace us, and we can finally rest. He spoke of those who violated the rituals, not because they lacked discipline, but because they tried to retain what they called their humanity, a photograph, a moment of curiosity, a desire to save. There was a surveyor named Varric. He opened the door for the replica of his son. Now he's still here, but only a perfect impostor speaking the aberrant language of the Black Wilds. And then there was Nera. She crossed the echoing threshold to save a wounded wolf. She returned for 2 hours, and before I realized what was happening, 3 days later, she spontaneously dissolved into the rock shell of the mountain. You must learn indifference, Kael. Indifference is our only defense. Elias turned his back, the 30 years of exhaustion evident in every movement. You will die here, Kael. That is the prophecy. The only goal is to maintain your soul's integrity until then. The words had barely left his mouth when a piercing electronic shriek erupted from the antiquated control panel. A red light flashed on the stellar map, centering on the southwestern sector, precisely the area of the third ridge, the echoing threshold. Elias's tone instantly shifted. All the previous slowness and fatigue vanished, replaced by cold, razor-sharp focus. Theory time is over. Don't worry about absorbing the rules. You'll learn them as they try to kill you. Something has begun to shatter at the threshold. It hasn't fully vanished, it's stirring. We cannot let it turn back. Even a sliver of the void is a seed of contagion. Elias retrieved a high-powered rifle from the weapons rack, not for killing, but for noise and distraction. No rest, rookie. You are on immediate patrol. This is your task, Kael, Elias said, handing the rifle to him. It was cold and heavy in Kael's grasp. Don't track it. Your only duty is to ensure it does not turn back. If it tries to crawl back into our zone, use whatever you have to scare it or drive it away. But listen closely. Elias snarled, his eyes locked onto Kael. Absolutely, do not cross the threshold. No matter what you see, no matter how pathetic or vulnerable it appears, do not cross the threshold. The training was finished. Now was the trial. Kael was thrust straight into danger, facing the exact threat warned in Ritual 4 on his very first night. Elias Thorne did not smoke. He merely held a piece of dark, half-burnt agarwood incense stick in his hand, inhaling the acrid smoke as if it were a necessary ritual to keep his lungs from turning to stone. The oil lamp set on the kitchen table cast long, stretching shadows, making Elias's face look like a hastily carved stone effigy. Kael stood rigid, struggling to process the sheer volume of toxic information just imparted. He had expected a safety manual and a few boring radio calls. Instead, he had been handed an esoteric religion built on abstinence and fear. Elias set the incense stick down. The clatter sounded dry, like 2 pebbles knocking together. Surveyor, Elias spat out the title. There is no such thing as a surveyor here. They send you, equip you with that title, a clean uniform, and a useless map, only to make your death seem organized. Kael swallowed hard. This is the Azure Peak Tower. I was informed it's the highest fire lookout station in the Constellation Forest Ring. The top floor, Elias cut in, his voice low and abrasive, like rolling gravel. It has a fire lookout station, but that is the thinnest veneer of justification the authorities could find for its existence. Forget the forest, forget the fire. This is not a job for the forestry department. Elias pointed a finger straight down at the kitchen floor. This is an anchor point, the one tenuous knot between your real world and the Black Wilds. The Azure Peak Forest isn't a barrier. It's the ground they play on, the testing range before the assault. This anchor point is the only thing preventing the void from flooding through and unraveling everything you've ever known. Elias leaned forward, bracing both hands on the table. We are not guards. We are gatekeepers. Our only mission is not fire suppression, but the maintenance of stellar balance, keeping the gate closed through absolute restraint and adherence. Violating the rules I am about to transmit is not an administrative mistake. It is an act of magical sabotage. It is an invitation for the void entities to step in and turn Azure Peak into a black hole. He looked at Kael with a corrosive weariness, as if he had already witnessed Kael's death 100 times. You aren't a new deployment. You are a new sacrifice. I am Elias Thorn, and I have been here 30 years. 30 years. Look at me. I am the cost of compliance. Now be silent and listen, because these rules are not recommendations. They are the fences that save your life. Elias began his discourse on the nature of the enemy. The void cares nothing for flesh or bone. It cares for consciousness, identity, and replacement. They don't fight with daggers. They fight with spiritual corruption. When you patrol, sometimes you will see them, especially after a heavy fog. Succulent berries, deep red, or mushrooms that emit a flickering, almost electronic glow, unlike any natural bioluminescence. They are called luminous berries. Elias slammed his hand down on the table. This is the first prohibition and the most absolute. Do not, under any circumstances, consume any luminescent flora found in the Azure Peak woods. Never, no matter how hungry you are or how much you crave them. He explained that this fruit was an invitation sent straight from the Black Wilds. It promises enlightenment, a supernatural clarity. But it is not light. It is a lure. Eating it binds the eater's soul to the woods. You become a silent collaborator. You will still stand, still breathe, but you will not speak. You will not resist. You will turn into a living, speechless statue, a cryptic smile on your lips, guarding the ingress from within. You will guard this anchor point for the enemy. What do you carry in your pockets besides a lighter, rookie? Kael stammered. An old photo of my girlfriend. A lighter engraved with my name. Elias's gaze froze. Discard them. Now. Burn them. Bury them. Make them cease to exist. It is forbidden to carry any personal items, keepsakes, photos, or letters of emotional significance inside this tower. This is not a place for nostalgia. Elias described the consequence. Those mementos are not decorations. They are psychic beacons. They are a direct conduit to your soul, and more importantly, to the people you love. The void cannot create things that never existed, but it can create perfect copies from the data you provide. They will appear. A perfect replica of your girlfriend or your parents, standing at the end of the hall, calling your name. They will attack your sanity. This violation leads to self-loss or complete replacement. A flawless imposter will replace you, while you are locked inside your own body, a prisoner watching its every move. Burn them now, rookie. You must become a tool, not a man. Kael had burned the photograph and the engraved lighter in the metal refuse bin, though his hands shook. Elias did not wait, continuing the horrifying chain. The Azure Peak region is full of strange creatures. Most are harmless, or merely decoys. But there is one kind. They are called shadow stags. You will see them at dawn or dusk when the fog clings low. They move slowly, almost unreal, leaving no tracks. They are entities moving in borrowed skin. Temporary forms the void uses to cross over. They must go unnoticed. It is forbidden to record images in any form, photography, detailed sketches, or video, of the shadow stags. Documenting them is considered the stealing of their light, an act of magical possession. It triggers an immediate retaliation, the cursed exchange. The gatekeeper's physical body is exchanged with that mimicked entity. Your soul is permanently jailed within that image, frozen, warped, looking through the paper or the film, while something wearing your face steps out, soulless, merely perfect emptiness. I had to deal with that once. It was not pleasant. There are 3 ridges surrounding this tower. The first and second ridges are normal patrol ground. But there is an invisible limit at the 3rd ridge. It's not a location. It's a concept. We call it the echo threshold. This is where the void entities, when severely damaged, shatter and are pulled back into the spatial gap they came from. You must never cross the third ridge to pursue, observe, or assist any injured creature. Elias stressed that intervention was unacceptable. We are not veterinarians. You should not feel pity. If you cross that threshold, you enter a place where reality is dissolved. Even if you return looking normal, you will carry back an invisible psychic contagion. This contagion isn't bacteria. It is neurological distortion. It won't kill immediately, but it spreads chaos, hallucination, and madness rapidly to anyone you come into contact with. Others will see all their worst illusions, while you feel only coldness and emptiness. You will turn this tower into an insane asylum before you realize it. If you cross the threshold, you must stay there. Elias stood up straight, and beneath the dim lamplight, his transformation became distinct and frightening. The skin on his neck and the backs of his hands was no longer ordinary flesh. It was hard, dry, and contained patches of blue-gray, like volcanic rock worn down over millennia. Across his cheekbones and temples ran faint, subtle striations of nearly invisible mineral crystals, as if his physical structure had self-reinforced against the supernatural pressure of the black wilds. These marks were the astral scars of 30 years of continuous, direct exposure to the void. "Look at me," Elias repeated, his voice now holding a desperation that bordered on exhaustion. "I am no longer the Elias Thorne who arrived here. That man died within the first year, when he was still trying to write letters home and thought about planting a small garden. I am what's left. I erased my old identity to turn myself into a tool, an extension of the tower itself, a living watchtower. This is what you must learn. Minimalist survival." Elias drove home their core, brutal philosophy. We do not fight to win. There is no victory here, rookie. The void is the ocean. We are a fragile grain of sand held back by an old spell. Fighting is for non-corruption. Fighting is to maintain the integrity of the soul, no matter how cruel it must be. Forget compassion, forget curiosity. You must eliminate all human emotion. Emotions are the cracks, and the entities know how to climb through them. When you hear the cry of a child at the base of the tower, you must accept that it is the sound you think is a cry, engineered to lure you into breaking the rules. He hissed, and Kael could feel the chill radiating from Elias's body. "Do you know the difference between your predecessors and me? They were not weak, not stupid. They failed because they tried to hold on to their so-called humanity." Elias began a horrific survey of failures. There was Overseer number 7. Anya. She crossed the third ridge, just to drag back a small animal, like a broken-legged hare. She thought kindness would counter the magic. She returned and looked perfectly normal. But within 3 days, everything in the tower started breaking down. She would look in the mirror and see something waving behind her. She spoke to me, but her voice kept slipping into unintelligible words, a grotesque jargon, as if she was trying to communicate underwater. Within a week, all she said were meaningless curses and terrible truths about distant planets. I had to use chains to hold her, and eventually, I had to disconnect her from this anchor point in another way. Elias did not elaborate on the method, but Kael felt his stomach knot. Or Overseer number 11. David. He only carried a lighter engraved with his daughter's name. A small thing. Harmless. He kept it for 3 years. Then, it started functioning as a beacon. His daughter appeared on the trail, not far from here. A perfect replica, calling Daddy. David knew ritual too well. He knew it was an illusion. But he couldn't resist his humanity. He ran down to hug it. When he returned, he looked more like himself. More sober, healthier. But he forgot one small thing, his habit of drinking black coffee. The imposter preferred sugar. It took me 2 months of observation to be sure. Finally, when I confronted him, it just smiled, a smile too wide, and said in David's voice, "I am David. He is gone. He is happier where he is." I had to cleanse the tower after that. I never found out where David's soul was imprisoned. Elias pointed to a corner of the wall, where a faint crystalline fissure ran deep into the basalt stone. And there are those who violate Ritual 1. They are not dealt with by me. They are absorbed by Azure Peak. Some have become silent sentinels standing guard in the forest. Others are drawn into the rocky crust of the mountain itself. Do you hear the occasional scraping sound? That is them. They are turning into rock, piece by piece, permanently part of the Black Wilds, holding the gate for the Black Wilds. Elias ended the lecture with utter coldness. You are not allowed to become a relic. You are not allowed to become a lesson. You must become a switch, only operating, not feeling. That is the only way you can last. You must eliminate everything personal, because at Azure Peak, personal is where the destruction begins. Elias moved to the window, all trace of weariness gone. Focus replaced it. He stared directly into Kael's eyes. You will die, rookie. Sooner or later, Azure Peak will demand its price. The goal is not to last, but to maintain your soul's integrity until then, so that when you die, you are not a collaborator. Kael was about to open his mouth to ask one more question, but Elias abruptly changed his tone. His terrifying calm vanished. He squinted through the dusty window, though it was still dark outside. Time for absorption of the rules is over. He turned back, and for the first time, Kael saw genuine, undisguised alarm in Elias's hard eyes. There has been a stir, not an illusion, but a genuine shift in energy. Something has been damaged, driven back, in the area of the third ridge. Elias grabbed an old rifle and a high-powered flashlight from a steel cabinet. This is not a theoretical exercise, Kael. That is ritual happening. An entity has touched the echo threshold and is trying to come back. You get no rest, no preparation. You are going on patrol immediately. On your first night, Elias placed the cold rifle into Kael's hands. Training is concluded. Now for the trial. Your purpose is not to destroy it. You can't. Your purpose is to apply everything you just heard, right now, while it's happening. He pushed Kael toward the heavy metal door, where the cold Azure Peak wind had already begun to whistle through. Your mission, do not track it. Ensure it does not return to the tower. And absolutely, never cross the echo threshold. If you see me cross the threshold for any reason, you shoot me. That is the compulsory gatekeeper's oath. Go now, rookie. May your soul remain intact. Elias Thorne did not sit. He stood, leaning against the thick observation glass, the weak light of the late afternoon staining his worn uniform the color of moss and rusted steel. When Kael moved to offer the standard greeting, the expected title of New Surveyor, Elias cut him off with a swift cruelty, like extinguishing a newly lit candle. Shut up, Elias said, his voice dry and abrasive, not a grumble of annoyance, but the chilling confirmation of a permanent truth. You are not a surveyor. There is no administrative work here. If you think you are monitoring wildfires, turn back. You have the wrong address. Kael snapped to attention, his youthful enthusiasm dissolving into a frozen confusion. This is not an observation post, private, Elias continued, his gaunt finger tapping a schematic map drawn in black ink on aged parchment, devoid of any administrative markings. This is the anchor point. This Blue Peak Tower is the only tether your world has to reality. Across that valley, where the forest grows too dense to swallow the light, is the Black Wilds. He turned, facing Kael with eyes that carried the 30-year weight of exhaustion. We are not guards. We are gatekeepers. The singular duty here is to maintain the astral equilibrium, keep the gate closed, and prevent what the fools outside call paranormal phenomena. Here, we call them the void entities. Elias stepped closer. Kael could smell the cold metallic tang and damp moss emanating from the man. Violation of the rules here is not an administrative failure. It is not a missing report or tardiness. It is an act of pure magical sabotage. It is an invitation to intrusion. Understand this clearly, Kael. You were not transferred. You were placed in a position of sacrifice. I have been here 30 years, long enough to witness the failure of 8 predecessors. My existence is proof of the cost of compliance, and I do not intend to let you ruin things. Elias began the instruction, his tone flattening like a tombstone. He did not teach, he declared law. Void entities do not fight with physical force as you know it, Elias explained. They fight with corruption, false allure, and identity substitution. They do not need to breach the tower wall. They only need to breach your will. Ritual 1. The glowing fruit, the lamp of deceit. In the Black Wilds, there is a bioluminescent flora, growing in clusters like dazzling blue glass berries, often appearing after a thunderstorm. It is absolutely forbidden to consume anything glowing you find. It is the first invitation of the wilds. Elias gripped Kael's shoulder tightly. That fruit grants what the void calls false enlightenment. It does not kill you instantly. It shackles the eater's soul to the forest, turning you into a silent collaborator. You will cease to be Kael. You will become a living, speechless statue with glass eyes, standing guard for the invasion from within. You will be a magical switch waiting to be flipped. Ritual 2. Personal traces, spiritual beacon. Did you bring photographs of loved ones, letters, or any memento carrying deep emotional significance? Elias asked. Kael shook his head. He had heard vague warnings before deploying and had discarded his wallet and a single family photograph at the staging post below the mountain. Good. If you had, discard them immediately. This is an absolute law. Forbidden from bringing any personal item of emotional meaning inside this tower. These keepsakes are not comfort. They are spiritual beacons for navigation. The void cannot create things that never existed, but it can perfectly simulate what it sees and feels through those items. Elias shivered with a visible revulsion, as if chasing away a parasitic thought. They will generate perfect copies or horrifying illusions of your loved ones, attacking your sanity. Violation of this ritual leads to 2 outcomes. The first is loss of self. You are trapped in your own illusion. The second is complete replacement by a perfect imposter. And private, I cannot allow a perfect imposter to keep the gate. Elias paced, examining a set of antique brass measuring instruments. The clicking and whirring of the metal echoed in the observation room. Ritual 3. The Shadow Stags, the Grim Exchange. When the low fog thickens over the valley, you will see them. We call them the Shadow Stags. They are not animals. They are entities that move in borrowed skins. It is forbidden to record their images. No photography, no detailed sketching, no recording of them in any form. Even attempting to commit the details to memory is dangerous. Why? Kael whispered. Recording their image is considered stealing their light. They possess no fixed form, only a borrowed shell. Your act of fixing that shape onto an image is an intensely aggressive magical action. They respond with retaliatory substitution. Elias looked at Kael sharply. It causes the Grim Exchange. Your physical body is traded with a masquerading entity, a hollow shell moving as you, while your soul is eternally imprisoned within that photograph as a curse. A static object, incapable of dying, hung on a wall. Ritual 4. The Echo Threshold, Psychic Contagion. Elias pointed to a faint boundary line on the map, running through a jagged sequence of rocky peaks. This is our absolute physical limit. The third ridge. Never cross this ridge. Even if you see a wounded creature attempting to crawl over, even if you hear a cry for help or see a beckoning light, never cross. What is that place? That is the Echo Threshold. When entities are severely damaged, they shatter and return to the void through this threshold. Interfering with their process of disintegration is unacceptable. You are attempting to grasp the ungraspable. A gatekeeper returning from the Echo Threshold carries something. Not physical wounds. It is an invisible psychic contagion. This sickness does not kill you immediately. It rapidly spreads chaos, hallucination, and madness to anyone you come into contact with. It turns you into a psychic bomb. If you cross the threshold, I cannot allow you back into the tower. I will have to shoot you before you can infect me. Elias let out a weary sigh, like the sound of wind whistling through a rocky crevice. This fatigue did not come from physical exertion, but from the prolonged existence of sheer will. Kael finally had a chance to observe Elias clearly. His skin no longer looked human. It was hard, dry, and had dark patches like cooled volcanic rock. On his temples and cheekbones were faint, sinister scars that looked like gray quartz crystals, clear evidence of prolonged exposure to the void's astral energy. He was a man who had self-transformed into a part of the tool he guarded. I have erased my identity. I cannot remember my full name, what my wife looked like, or what I did before I came here. I am Elias Thorn, and I am the Watchtower. I am a tool, and you must also be a tool, Elias said, his voice imbued with philosophical renunciation. Our philosophy is brutal, private. We fight not to win. We cannot win. We fight not to be corrupted. We fight to maintain soul integrity. If one of the rituals is violated, it means the void has won. Elias began moving, slowly but deliberately, along the work area. He pulled out a thick leather journal with a singed cover. Your predecessors. They failed, not because they were weak, but because they tried to hold on to their humanity. One tried to keep his wedding ring, violation of Ritual 2. The void fabricated his wife. She walked out of the mist crying. He was replaced within 3 days. The imposter spoke with a guttural voice and never blinked. Another, the fifth gatekeeper. He saw a shadow stag caught in barbed wire. He attempted to rescue it, violation of Ritual 4, even at the boundary. He returned, seemingly fine, but within a week, everything he touched devolved into chaos. He didn't kill people with his hands. He killed people with madness. I had to use the butt of my sidearm to knock him out before he could infect me. Elias slammed the journal onto the desk. The loud sound echoed. They were either completely absorbed into the mountain's rock facade or turned into eternal statues. Have you seen the crystals on my skin? That is the price of compliance. Now, you will pay the price for your survival. Elias turned to face Kael. His wrinkled face now held no weariness, only a sharp, cruel affirmation. I will not lie. You will die here, Kael. Either in a year, or 10 years, or tomorrow. The objective is not to last, but to maintain your soul's integrity until then. If you violate anything I have just told you, I will not hesitate to end you to protect the gate. Do you understand? Kael swallowed dryly, his entire body rigid. I understand, Sir Thorn. Not Sir Thorn. Gatekeeper. Now prepare. Elias suddenly stopped speaking. There was no bell, no red light flashing. Only an incredibly subtle shift in the air, an oppressive silence, so heavy that Kael could feel it pressing on his eardrums. Kael looked out the window. The Blue Peak forest, already dark, now seemed to be swallowing light faster. Night had fallen rapidly, bringing a thin, damp layer of mist creeping over the mountaintop. It is there, Elias whispered, his voice deeper, carrying the resonance of honed stone. An entity, not the moving kind, but the stirring kind. It has begun to disrupt itself near the echo threshold, the third ridge. Kael felt a cold panic rise in his throat. But, I just arrived. I need time to absorb the rules, to survey the position. There is no time. That is beyond your jurisdiction, private. Elias crushed any hope of rest or preparation. We cannot let it shatter there without control. Uncontrolled disintegration can create a magical wave that reaches here. This is the immediate test. You will go on patrol immediately, on your first night. Elias opened a heavy iron cabinet, extracting a thick coat sewn from exotic animal hide and brass hooks. He tossed it toward Kael. Put this on. It is charmed. It doesn't make you invisible, but it makes you less interesting to the entity. And take this gun. The pistol Elias offered was no ordinary weapon. It was unusually heavy, carved with arcane symbols, and the barrel was made of a dull gray metal. This is a containment tool, not a killing weapon. It fires astral energy pulses. If you see anything trying to cross the third ridge, shoot it. Do not shoot to kill. Shoot to push it back to where it disintegrates. Never point it at another person, unless I order you to. Kael trembled as he fastened the coat. Its scent was a strange mix of ozone, clay, and dry blood. The pistol felt cold and heavy in his hand. You will go down to Observation Post 3 at the tower base. That is the closest point to the echo threshold. You will hold position there until sunrise, unless I call you back. This gate requires continuous vigilance. Training is over. Now is the test. Kael's confusion peaked. He wanted to refuse, to shout that he wasn't trained for this, that he was merely a fire surveyor. But looking at Elias, he knew those words would be meaningless. Elias was not a man who listened to human pleas. "And remember Ritual 4, Elias said, stepping toward the door. "This is your mission, do not track it. Ensure it does not come back. And absolutely, do not cross the threshold. If you see a human body part, a familiar uniform, or hear a predecessor's cry for help, hold position. It is merely a fragment attempting to infect you." Elias opened the steel door leading down the spiral staircase. Cold wind rushed in, carrying the spectral whistling sound of the mountain forest. "Go," Elias commanded, without a word of good luck or assurance. Kael knew he had no choice. He raced down the stairs. Each step was a terrible clang in the tower's sudden silence. The safety this tower offered had vanished. Now, it was just a towering iron cage amidst a crumbling world. When Kael finally reached Observation Post 3, a small, cold bunker built into the mountain rock, he peered through the thick window. The mist had thickened, only 50 meters from the post. Farther away, the third ridge was a jagged, dark set of teeth, completely swallowing the starlight. Kael felt a great pressure in his chest, as if a colossal, invisible object was moving behind the ridges. He could hear a sound. It was not a roar, but the sound of breaking. The tearing of metal, the crushing of bone, the shattering of glass, all sounding simultaneously and continuously, yet lacking any physical source. It was like the acoustic echo of disintegration, exactly what Elias had described about the echo threshold. He looked at the containment pistol in his hand. He was not allowed to cross. He was not allowed to track. The only mission was to stand here and shoot something that shouldn't exist, but was trying to return. The mist began to move, not due to wind, but due to a compelling force. Kael gripped the gun, closing his eyes for a brief second, trying to push back the images of the petrified predecessors and the perfect impostors. He opened his eyes. A silhouette loomed, unclear, moving among the mist-covered pines. It did not resemble a shadow stag. It resembled a person. It was crawling, attempting to cross the boundary line of the third ridge, its body deformed and emitting the sound of breaking. But the clothes it wore were the familiar gray-blue uniform of a surveyor. The stench of iron and despair flooded the bunker. Kael gasped. This was precisely what Elias had warned against. A human-shaped fragment trying to infect him. He raised the gun, the metal icy. He knew this was not a person in need of help. This was a void entity using the skeleton of a failed man as a toxic invitation. Kael pulled the trigger. A piercing whoosh sounded, and a deep blue light beam slammed into the crawling silhouette. The silhouette writhed, emitting a silent scream felt in the very marrow of Kael's bones, and began to disintegrate into dark crystalline dust, retreating back toward the echo threshold. Kael stood motionless, breathing heavily in the small bunker. He had complied. He had shot without crossing the threshold. But when he looked back at the boundary, he saw not one, but 3 more silhouettes beginning to coalesce from the mist, all wearing uniforms, all attempting to crawl across. The gatekeeper's first night had begun.